Welcome to Outside the Box. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Scott Barrett. You can find him on Twitter at Scott Barrett DFB. And this is a Stochastic and Fantasy Points collaboration. We're going to be taking a look at the tools from both of our companies to identify the best plays once again this week. Worked out pretty well last week, Scott. I really liked the Texan stacks just based on the top stacks tool, some of our tools at Stochastic. And then we come in this show and you also like the Texan stack. And then you added Noah Brown to the conversation, not somebody that I had brought up on any previous shows. Absolutely nailed it. When we were building stacks last week, I said, who is the guy that we need to have in lineups? And Scott said Noah Brown was the guy that we needed to have in lineups. We could not make a lineup without having Noah Brown in at least one of them. So that went extremely well for us, Scott. Was that better than even you imagined?
Well, yeah. Well, it was even better than that because you asked me who the one guy we had to have in our lineup because it hit the week before. And I said it was between Amari Cooper and right. Noah Brown. And they both had big days. And we cashed, right? Where'd we finish with that Stroud lineup?
So that's the bad news, Scott.
Oh,
we finished like just outside of cashing with so we made two lineups. One of them was a Stroud double stack. Unfortunately, we didn't have the nut stack.
The quad stack.
We had, we didn't want Nico Collins. Ultimately, like he scored a touchdown immediately. I had so much Nico Collins, felt great about it. That was the part where we went wrong. So we went Nico Collins and Noah Brown in that stack instead of Tank Dell and Noah Brown, which what we really wanted was three Texans in Noah Brown, Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz is what we really wanted, which is funny because we also started the show last week. You asked me on an ugly slate like this, are you going to be overstacking or understacking? Which way are you more inclined to go? And honestly, I didn't give a strong answer. My answer was, I think you can do both. Like I'm going to be building lineups that are overstacking, building lineups that are understacking. And if you overstacked and went with the Texans, like Utica did, you could have won a milli with that triple stack, just hit the absolute nuts with that Texans triple stack last week. So it was a great conversation. That was that you started with to start the show last week. Like, what are we doing in terms of the amount of players in our stacks last week? And obviously if you triple stacked, it went pretty well for you with the Texans last week. But our lineup, Scott, just barely fell outside of the cash. I forget exactly where it went wrong. We had some real duds in it though. Like there were just a couple players who really held us back. I think we might have had
Goddard who got hurt. And, maybe a few other guys. Well, Nico got hurt in that game as well. But
Christian Watson was in that lineup.
Oh,
that was part of it. We did not have the right pieces in that one. Yeah.
But I mean, we like hit on every single guy that you needed to have in order to profit on the slate. And, we correctly identified some flimsy chalk. And I think that's kind of been this show every single week is like we've nailed the guys you needed to have. And like, that's what this game is all about. And so I think we've had the nuts every single week. Like you could get there, we're not going to be perfect. There's going to be some Christian Watsons sprinkled in, but I think you watch this show and you really don't need too much more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Helps you to get on the right plays. It's going to be hard, regardless of how good you are at nailing the right plays. If you're not, I mean, even if you are MME, people don't understand how hard it is to hit the actual nuts. But we've definitely got the right components here, and we've identified some pretty contrarian plays that have worked out really well. So hopefully we can do that once again this week.
I feel like we're really close, and like even personally, like all my Stroud lineups weren't quads. They did have Amari, but CeeDee Lamb was on all my other lineups, so it wasn't perfect, but it was close. And like every week so far, I felt like we've been really, really close.
I mean, 2 weeks ago, we got 1,234th place in the Millie Maker out of 178,000 lineups. Like we were right there. We've been very close. This week, though, of course, we are going to build the winning Millie Maker lineup right here on the stream for everybody. We're going to take it down. And of course, we're going to be chopping with whoever else enters it with us. But we'll take a small chop, I guess. We're going to build on the stream. We got a super chat already. So before we get into our usual stuff, I want to bring up this super chat that we got from Mike. Cash last week, min cash, but had Daniel Jones stack. So that was the other stack we did. The one, you said last week, Neil, you usually the ones that are doing really great are the ones that you start the stack. I started the Daniel Jones stack last week. Of course, he got hurt. I don't think he was going to get there anyway. It was not looking great, but had Daniel Jones stack would have been so much better if he stayed in the game. What is the next big out of the box idea at this time? I'm thinking Goff stack. Goff stack is just not going to be really outside the box. Like I like Goff stacks this week, but I don't think that I would call it an outside the box play. We'll take a look at ownership Do you want to throw one out now, or should we? I mean, we're going to get into
we'll get there.
All right, we'll answer this when we get to quarterbacks. How about Mike? All right. So we'll do our usual stuff. Again, we need to do our survivor picks. Actually, first, before we do our survivor picks, which we'll do really quickly, let's take a look at last week's Millie Maker lineup out of Utica, which I've already got pulled up here. So as we talked about, he went the full-on triple stack, CJ Stroud with Noah Brown, Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz, and had the run back with Rashad White in there. So full-on game stack there for Utica. He played Bijan Robinson, got the Millie Maker win with 6.9 fantasy points out of Bijan Robinson. That's pretty impressive. CeeDee Lamb obviously went off last week. Josh Jacobs, that's a guy that we were on big time last week as well, got 22 fantasy points. Actually, not I in my memory, Josh Jacobs had a better game than this even because he scored a couple touchdowns, but I guess that's still a fine game. And then of course, Brown's defense putting up 23 points. Any notes about this lineup, Scott, or have we already talked about the most important part, which is just a full-on game stack?
Yeah, so I mean, I said Josh Jacobs was probably the third best running back play of the slate. I really liked him. I made the mistake of just really going way over rate on Saquon and Kamara, which was a mistake. But yeah, Jacobs an obvious play. CeeDee Lamb I really liked. I don't know if I said it on the show. I might have been afraid to say it, but I felt it in my heart, which is that I thought he was in a better spot to go nuclear than AJ Brown in a much tougher matchup. Wow. Rashad White was an obvious value, and then he makes sense as that sort of bring back on this onslaught. And we were on CJ Stroud. We really like the potential for him to finally be unleashed and go pass heavy. And we love Noah Brown, love Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz, but obviously the biggest thing here is a triple stack plus the bring back. And that is such an advantage because instead of having to get, 12 things right, you narrow it down, you take out 5 things and, you just grab the value on White and the upside on Lamb and the value on Jacobs. And you could even miss on a Bijan. And that's enough on what was a pretty gross slate and otherwise. So you just had that one game. And that was kind of the story of the week last week. And I keep thinking to myself that onslaughts seem to be underrepresented in terms of how often they're played and overrepresented in terms of how often they're on the winning lineup, because it would have been, I think, impossible to get there without this combination, especially in a large field tournament like the Millie Maker. So, if you ever have a good vibe on a game, I really think this goes over, consider going that full onslaught route. I kind of never do that. I'm always, at most dub stack and a bring back. But I might change that this week. And honestly, I do think this is an advantage to MME players to get there. Yeah, go ahead.
Another funny thing is he could have played Josh Jacobs in that running back spot, played Kate Otten in the flex, would have been an even better full-on game stack there with Kate Otten in this lineup. And it could have, I don't know where he would have upgraded that with the extra salary. It wasn't really an upgrade there. So probably nobody was going to get to that lineup because it would have left too much salary on the table. But just funny that it could have been an even bigger game stack and won by even more. And this lineup already, won by a significant amount. So I don't see exactly how much it was, but either way, kudos to Utica, obviously. Certainly in the GOAT conversation as far as DFS players go.
I'm team Alex. Come on, man.
I mean, I'm always team Alex. You know that I am.
Bijan and Alex would never.
That's true. Alex would have Kate Ott in there for sure. Yeah. No, I've said it before. I think that it's people don't really put enough respect on the fact that Alex put all of his tools out there and his tools projections. He made them all public and continued to crush even after doing that. As somebody who I just started doing content, telling people what I'm going to do, and saw my play decline significantly as soon as I started telling people exactly what I'm going to do. So putting your actual, all of your tools and stuff out there, it's really impressive that Alex was able to do that and continue to absolutely crush. So obviously, I'm always team Alex. All right, let's take a look at the potential picks this week. So our survivor pool, we both got W's last week. I've already lost twice, so at this point it's really a pointless exercise, but you have not yet lost, Scott. You just missed 1 week when you're out of town. Let's take a look at some of the best plays this week. So obviously anybody who can play the Cowboys this week, a 17-point spread is absolutely insane. Hard to overlook that one. The Bills, I hadn't even thought about games that are not on the main slate, but you can play the Bills here at a 7.5 point spread. Got the Ravens 6.5 points favored. The Bengals are 6-point favorites. We don't have a lot to work with, Scott, here. As two of us who have both taken the Cowboys already, who's standing out to you as the spot you want to go to?
Yeah, I don't know. Can you show me my teams again one more time?
All right. So you have taken Ravens, Cowboys, Chiefs.
Yeah, I will go with the I'll go with the Bills. Nice to see I saved myself the Bills.
Smart. All right. Who do I want to go with? I could go, I think the Seahawks.
Bengals you could do.
I could do the Bengals. I'm going to do the Seahawks just because I feel like it's better to save the Bengals. Like they're going to have more games where they look great.
With the wide receivers healthy, ideally.
Yeah. Yeah, that looks good. I think that's it's enough of this segment. I feel like it's a segment that like neither of us is like all that enthusiastic about. We do it anyway, but we'll continue and talk about some DFS, especially because I didn't lead with this. I didn't tell people that we're actually going to keep this show relatively short, which is it's a relative term. We're going to go obviously over an hour as we always do, but I have a basketball show for whatever reason. The NBA is earlier today than it typically is, so I'm going to have to dip out before we can't go a full 2 hours. They probably keep it to closer to an hour and a half. So we're going to get right into the plays, and we'll start with the top stacks. Maybe actually let me refresh this real quick just in case anything has changed. Nope. Okay, we have not an update today yet. All right, so our top stacks, and I've got it sorted here by top stack odds. Actually, we should take a look at the chalk first. That's what we usually do. So we pretty much just have 3 chalky plays, and there's kind of a big distinction between them because we've got the Bengals coming in at 17%, Cowboys at 11%, and then Seahawks at 10%. Of those 3 teams, Scott, are there any of them that you love here? Anybody that you're fading in large field GPPs? Who do you like of the Bengals, Cowboys, Seahawks?
Yeah, let me just remind the listeners what this show is. What I am doing is trying to intentionally poke holes in the chalk because the show is called Outside the Box. We're looking at things from a contrarian large field GPP perspective, where if you fade, let's say, the Bengals who are chalky and Jamar Chase, who's super chalky, let's say Jamar Chase is going to be 33% owned, right? And you fade him and he performs poorly, then you've immediately wiped out a third of the field to give yourself a massive advantage. So obviously, Jamar Chase is a good play, but I'm going to be intentionally trying to poke holes in him. And you can decide for yourself, like how valid you think that is, but like, that's the name of the game. And so I think you can make an easy case against all 3 of these teams, really. So Bengals, Joe Burrow, projected highest owned quarterback. And it's like, are we really sure about that when T. Higgins is out? Okay, granted, over the last 2 seasons, Joe Burrow actually averages more fantasy points per game when either Higgins or Jamar Chase misses. But Chase is also seriously banged up. He just activated 2 wide receivers from the practice squad, which, I don't think bodes all that well. Like, I think he plays. Our injury experts, like, not too worried about the injury. But that is an argument against him. And, I'm definitely, he's my cash quarterback of the week. I think he's a really strong play. What I will say is you have him at 17% and then you have Stroud at 3%. So I don't know, an eighth of the ownership. What are the realistic odds that Burrow without Higgins and a banged up Chase outscores CJ Stroud, who, by the way, just had like one of the best games ever, certainly best game ever by a rookie quarterback? I would put it at, 60-40, 65-35, certainly better than this ownership implies. So definitely really like CJ Stroud. The only thing holding him back all season was the offensive play caller being foolishly run heavy. They only had 2 games with a positive pass rate over expectation heading into their last game. It was the 2nd lowest in the league. And then, the head coach came out and were like, yeah, like we have to be, and we are now more willing to, chuck it when the run game's not working. And guess what? Damian Pierce is out. It's not a good run matchup. So I expect them to do that again this week and try and keep pace. I really like CJ Stroud. I certainly like him more than Joe Burrow at ownership, although Burrow is a great play. Dallas, the argument against Dak Prescott's really easy, and that's that this game could be over by the start of the second quarter.
Yep.
So I'm not really sure why he's this highly owned. But of course, I'll probably have a few CD Dak lineups just because the upside is so immense. Assuming for whatever reason, it is more competitive than we think, or whether or not those two can get there in just 2 quarters of football, which is always possible. Seattle, you only have it 10%, but I was seeing him a little chalkier everywhere else. I think ETR had him as the as like the second best quarterback play of the week, cash viable. And I don't know. I just don't really. Geno hasn't been good at all this year. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf have not been good at all this year from a DFS perspective. Really overrated spike week potential for DK and even Lockett to a lesser extent over the last 2 seasons. And realistically, what is this offense? It's a run first offense. We know what their identity is. And what is the game script? They're favored by 6 points. So what do we think they're going to do? You can talk about the matchup and how this is a best possible quarterbacks are destroying against Washington, which is super valid. This is like the worst pass defense in football. But they also just traded away their only 2 good players who are also 2 of the most highly graded run defenders in football. And so now they're just bad everywhere.
Yeah.
And to me, this is just, we know a cheat code in DFS is play Kenneth Walker when the Seahawks are favored by 4 or more points and they're favored by 6, and Walker's drawing contrarian levels of ownership when Geno is uber chalky and the receivers are uber chalky. So I like that as a massive leverage point for us this week.
All right. So you're not a huge Geno believer. Yeah, I'm struggling with it a little bit because I imagine once we update ownership, Geno is going to be getting more ownership than 10%. At this level, I do still have interest in Geno. If he gets up to like 20%, then suddenly it's like, yeah, I'm willing to buy all of the holes that you're poking in it, because they are certainly valid holes. Like it's a great spot against Washington, but as you said, could just be a run spot. Like it would be very easy for Seattle to run all over this new version of the Commanders defense. So certainly easy to poke holes in there.
He's had one game over 16.5 DraftKings fantasy points this year. He's had 3 games under 10. He had under 5 last week.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird to me. He's chalk and Kenneth Walker's not chalk, to be honest.
Yeah. That's fair. Well, we'll talk about Kenneth Walker a little bit more, obviously, when we get to running backs. But I think you did a solid job of poking holes in the chalk. Now let's talk about some contrarian plays here, Scott. So I'm just going to open it up to you. I mean, I think anybody outside of those top 3, everybody's below 7% projected ownership here. So let's just talk about who do you like? Who are your favorites?
I like Brock Purdy's in that upper range in terms of ownership. But I'm really okay with that. I'm just like a big Brock Purdy stan. People. I was kind of hoping he would be lower owned. There's just a lot of people making a big deal about how he's regressed in recent weeks. And I'm not really seeing that. I'm just seeing more interceptions. He's been really strong for fantasy. And 2 of those interceptions came right after he was concussed. And then another came deflected off the hands of the receiver. And you have to remember also before that, he was legitimately flawless. San Francisco hit 30 total points in 10 of 11 starts. He was easily top 2 among all quarterbacks since he entered the league, since his first career start in fantasy points per dropback. 19.4 DraftKings fantasy points per game across his 15 fully healthy starts. That easily makes him one of the best values of the slate. Jacksonville has a really good defense, but they are a pass funnel defense. So I really like Christian McCaffrey. I think, Debo and Ayuk are both in good spots. Jacksonville is giving up a lot to outside wide receivers this year, although they did just get their top cornerback back. Debo looks like a strong value. And then conversely, San Francisco's defense has been on the decline. So there's an argument for a number of the players on Jacksonville's side. So I do really like Brock Purdy. And then definitely at ownership, the player who stands out most to me is CJ Stroud. You'd think after his massive game, he would be higher owned in the game that, like that Joe Burrow is mega chalk. Like you don't want the guy on the other side. They're,
Right.
Opposing quarterbacks are always massively positively correlated together. And you could argue maybe he has more stackable upside. And then after that is for sure. Well, this might be wrong, but to me is Will Levis. I'm legitimately excited to play Will Levis. He's already flashed a higher career ceiling than Mac Jones and like 6 points above Kenny Pickett. He's been hyper aggressive throwing the ball downfield. This is a top 3 pass funnel defense. And like an amazing matchup. Over their last 5 weeks, Tampa ranks dead last in schedule adjusted to quarterbacks, second best against running backs. So, and then add to that, they could be without both of their starting perimeter cornerbacks this week. Love DeAndre Hopkins this week, so that stack is easy. I also like Chigo Okonkwo, but maybe that's just my own personal galaxy brain play of the week. And then Rashad White or Mike Evans on the other side makes a lot of sense.
No Treylon Burks this week, so that makes Chigo Okonkwo stand out a little bit more with Treylon Burks out as well.
Yeah, the big thing is it's a massive zone heavy matchup. Tampa runs zone at the highest rate. He's one of those like super zone sensitive guys. So if he goes off, it would probably be a week like this. But yeah, like you said, Burks out, Tampa just getting destroyed through the air in recent weeks. And then, Kyler Murray, I think is obvious. Just he, over the last three or four seasons, he ranks 3rd among all quarterbacks in fantasy points per game. And like, he's just not at all priced. Like he can get there without his legs, but I also think like he might surprise people in terms of what he does with his legs. Like we saw Deshaun Watson after his ACL rehab, he came back and, second half of the season set career highs in rushing yards per game. And they were really conservative with Kyler. Like I think he's in a good spot, a high range of outcomes there. He could also be rusty and, shit the bed, but that's what you want to lean into in terms of tournaments. I legitimately, someone brought Jared Goff earlier. He's on the road, which is never ideal. You really look at the splits there and it's disgusting. No spike weeks on the road. It is a dome game. So you could argue those are dome outdoors splits instead of home road, but he's also struggled outdoors on the road in the dome. I don't really know what to make of that. You could argue it either way, but it's a best possible matchup on paper. Chargers are giving up a league high 5.4 schedule adjusted to quarterbacks. Not a great schematic matchup, not what we typically want, but I mean, this game has the highest over under the slate. It's a close spread, which implies shootout potential. And it's really not all that chalky. Like typically, highest over under game shootout spread is mega chalk. And that's just not. I really like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Sam Laporta, Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler. Like that's the stacking is easy, which is important when you're building these lineups. I think Josh Dobbs is super interesting. You're a Vikings homer, so I'm sure you love that, or maybe not a homer, a fan. So Dobbs was averaging 19.5 fantasy points per game over his last 7 games with the Cardinals. And then last week, 5 days after being traded to Minnesota, he didn't even know these players' names. He didn't know the plays, didn't take a single snap in practice, led the team to a victory, scored 24.9 fantasy points, all without Justin Jefferson, who, by the way, might play this week, which would be insane. And so you look at the matchup, and it looks bottom 10 on paper. But what I think is really interesting is, again, Dobbs, second most rushing yards of any quarterback behind only Lamar Jackson. Saints have given up 130 rushing yards to Trevor Lawrence and Tyson Bagent over the last 2 weeks, as well as 30 plus to Bryce Young, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield. They haven't really faced any hyper mobile quarterbacks. but they're giving up a lot of yards on the ground. So I think that's interesting. He might be someone who goes overlooked. And then Sam Howell, he's just like a Brock Purdy guy for me, where it's just like Sam Howell every single week.
Yep.
He's been awesome for fantasy, 17 fantasy points in 7 of 9 games, QB 10 across the full season. What's really helping him to reach this fantasy success is Washington is insanely pass heavy by pass rate over expectation. The top 4 teams are Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. You could argue it's a tough matchup. Seattle's looked really good of late. You could also poke some holes in that. Like Baltimore killed it last week. They just scored all their touchdowns on the ground. But he's just a guy like I like having exposure to every week. I think he's underrated. And then of course, Lamar Jackson at 1.2%. The argument, there's a lot of easy arguments against him, but the argument for him is like maybe he should never be 1.2%. Right. And he did drop 30 plus on the Browns earlier in the season. So those would be I wrote up a few more guys and I like deleted them from my article. So I don't know if you want to bring up anyone else, but those were the names who stood out to me.
Is Lamar Jackson just a guy that we should only play in what seemed like bad matchups? Because he absolutely crushed the Lions too. The week that I was like, yeah, I want to play him at low ownership, but like it's a tough matchup with the Lions. And then every week that he like we think he's going to be great, he ends up just being tracked. Like he's been really bad the past 2 games against in what should have been good spots. So yeah, maybe Lamar.
Yeah, well, I thought that was a good matchup for him against Detroit. They've been getting destroyed by hypermobile quarterbacks for a few years now. The issue I have with Lamar is, I think I sent you this link via DM, but Harbaugh said he wanted to recommit to the running backs inside the red zone, and then he's clearly done that the past few weeks. And Lamar's volume in the red zone has been abysmal. Like that's going to regress, but that does arguably cap his tournament winning potential. So he wasn't too high on my list, but I mean like 1.2% in a matchup he already smashed. That one's kind of easy.
All right, let me give some reactions here. And first of all, I just want to say Zach Everhard, he was on the show earlier and said that he wanted me to give you the shout out for your call. And he just showed, because he said he wasn't going to make it for the show. Maybe just stopped in briefly, but almost won the $1.20 max, taking your advice. So well done there, awesome. Zach. And Dallas, appreciate you as well. I also wanted to bring up this point that Dallas brought up, though, which is Brock Purdy is very Trent Williams / offensive line dependent. Trent Williams seems to be questionable this week. Is that going to affect your interest in Brock Purdy this week, Scott?
I was expecting he was back. Last I heard was it was looking like he was going to play. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly a knock. I'm still going to have pretty good ownership to him regardless of that. But I think that's a good point.
I also, so getting to the Brock Purdy point, just a quote in this, I got to give credit to Hayden Winks for catching this quote, which I had missed, from defensive coordinator of the Jaguars. So Mike Caldwell, Jaguars defense coordinator, said, "We emphasize stopping the run. We want to make offenses one-dimensional and take away the run game and make them throw the ball. And Jacksonville's defense is number 1 in neutral pass rate allowed," which is really interesting to me because they're a really good defense. One of the rare defenses that is trying to force teams to throw, which is one of the reasons that I actually named earlier Brock Purdy, that stack. I named him with Debo and George Kittle as my favorite stack of the week, largely just because those are the cheaper options than Brandon Ayuk. But I thought that was really interesting that they're trying to force teams to throw on them. Kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah. That's what I said. Second most PROE allowed, pass rate over expectation, which is great. Like, you're going to turn Christian McCaffrey into another wide receiver. All right, let's go. Wheels up for Purdy. Yeah.
I think that you've like basically named everybody that I really want to talk about. Brock Purdy was somebody that I definitely had interest in. Jared Goff, I will say, your buddy Graham Barfield was saying that he looked into it and he thinks that it might be when Jared Goff is favored, he does a lot better rather than home road. Like maybe that's more sticky. I don't know if that's I have not fact checked whether that is true, but I thought that was an interesting observation because the Lions are favored in this game. So if you don't want to play the narrative of Jared Goff can't play on the road, maybe he just does play well when he's favored. I don't know. I thought that was at least an interesting point that Graham had brought up.
Yeah, I don't know. If you just look at last year, he had 23 touchdowns at home, 6 on the road, and it's been like the exact same thing this year.
Yeah.
So that I don't know. That's kind of what I'm buying into, and like the argument against this is like, oh, this is just variance. You know, if you look at all players and like bucket into like random weeks, like odd versus even weeks, of course, there's going to be certain players who average 7 more fantasy points per game in even numbered weeks versus odd numbered weeks. So that doesn't mean it's real, valid, warranted, but it's like, I've been treating this as real for Amari Cooper for like 6 years now. And it's made me so much money by just always fading him on the road, playing him into it. Same thing for Big Ben, which like shout out to John Proctor. The funniest thing ever is like we finally figured out, or we think we figured out what was causing that. He outed himself as a porn addict after he retired. He would just like in his hotel room, like stay up watching porn until like 5 a.m. and then play the next day. And he also had like reoccurring elbow injuries. No. And so that became a bit on our podcast, but like, who knows? Like that could be a thing, you know. Jared Goff partying his ass off late at night on the road. Probably not, but you never know.
Yeah, you never know. Yeah, Kyler, that was a good call out. Did you have any interest in Sam Howell? Or are you just playing?
Yeah, I just hyped him up a bunch.
Oh yeah, you that's right. You did hype up Sam Howell.
I like him more than Geno Smith, for sure.
All right. What about either of these quarterbacks in the Pittsburgh Green Bay game? I know you like Christian Watson every week, it seems. Any interest in either of these Pittsburgh or Green Bay quarterbacks?
No, they both stink. I think Will Levis has a higher career high than either quarterback, and it's like 6 points above Kenny Pickett. So they're just like automatically out for me.
And I know you talked about this game, the Chargers Lions game. Did you have any interest in Justin Herbert specifically, like starting with Justin Herbert as a quarterback?
Yeah, you can make that argument. Highest over under, shootout spread. I just like Goff more because he's so much cheaper, better matchup, easier to stack. Whereas with Herbert, you could probably just get away with just playing Keenan. Well, I guess Eckler's in play too, but more stackable upside for Amon-Ra plus Laporta, I think. Then, I mean, like I don't trust Quentin Johnston. I don't trust. Yeah.
Me neither. Did you mention Baker Mayfield? I don't know. Tampa.
Yeah, I don't like him. I'd rather play Will Levis. I'd rather play a bunch of other guys in that price range.
All right. You ready to move on? Talk about some running backs?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. We will move on. Keep the show moving because we want to build some lineups at the end, and we know we are hurting for time here. All right. So running backs, starting with, we're going to sort by ownership here. The chalk, we got Tony Pollard at 24%, Joe Mixon 22%, Bijan 19%, Aaron Jones 17%. These top four, are you poking holes? Or are you playing them?
Yeah. So reminder again, what I'm trying to do here is intentionally poke holes. Like obviously, if a player is 25% projected owned, they're probably a really good play. But now Tony Pollard is suddenly chalk, and everyone's so excited to play him. Has he not burned you for 10 straight weeks in a row? Has he not fallen massively short of his volume-based expectation every single week? What do you think is causing that, Neil?
Tony Pollard being chalky? Just the matchup?
No, falling short of his expectations every single week.
I think that he has pretty low volume, and he looks a little bit less electric than he did last year. I think he lost a step after breaking his leg.
Yeah, so efficiency is a big thing, not volume. Volume is still like awesome, like especially as a percentage of the backfield. What I think is going wrong for him is just that Dallas isn't playing in any normal games. It's either like massive positive blowouts or massive negative blowouts. And what does this game project to be? A massive positive 17-point favorites. Like, would anyone be surprised would I be surprised if Pollard has 2 touchdowns in the first quarter? No. Would I be surprised if Pollard has 2 total touches in the second half because this game is just an absolute joke? No, I wouldn't. So like you want running backs with a positive spread, positive game script but like too much of a good thing could be a really bad thing. And so that's my concern with him. Definitely could score 3 touchdowns. Also could just be right back where he's been for a number of weeks. And, once again, people are like, it's like the Charlie Brown thing where the girl yanks away the football at the last second. Like, why do we keep falling for that? And then you can make the same argument for Joe Mixon, right? Who's just outside of that 5 touchdown game, as he's been a DFS dud just about every single week. I don't think he's exceeded 20 DK in any single game this year. Nope. And last year, minus that one mega blow up game from week 2 on, 0 over 18.5 DK minus the random 58 pointer. Obviously he's a good play because, this is a game where Cincinnati is expected to score a lot of points. They're reeling with wide receiver injuries, but I think you can make an easy case against that. And then Bijan Robinson, if your argument is like Arthur Smith's going to come to his senses and, finally give him you're just wrong. Like the joke is like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 10 weeks in a row, shame on you. Right? Like, what are we doing here? Like, this is why you and I have like hyped up Tyler Algier and Jonnu Smith more than anyone else, probably more than we should have, but it's just like, we should love Arthur Smith. He's the most predictable.
Tyler Algier against the Cardinals this week.
So wasn't on that, but I will say, like, you factor in that Arthur Smith's gonna not change anything about Bijan's usage, and he's like still like a clear value. I had him as a cash play. He's the RB 14 of the slate, RB 9 by DraftKings fantasy points per game if you exclude the food poisoning game. Really talented player. I'm surprised he hasn't broken off as many long touchdown runs as he has so far. It's a great matchup. It's a top 3 matchup. But you could argue there's questionable upside because he is just a committee back. He isn't being used near the end zone. So I think you could poke a hole in all these guys. Yeah.
Apologies. I had us on the FanDuel tab. So
okay.
That's just for the few running backs we've talked about so far. And I think it's largely
the same. You
want to
play the Frankfurt slate?
Yeah, let's take a look at just the main slate. We'll take a look at DraftKings running back. I was wondering, I was like, these price tags are not what I thought they were. I thought Bijan was cheaper than 6,600, and then I realized, it's because I have him on the FanDuel slate. So
I mean, not much has changed here, right?
Not a ton different. We still have Mixon in there at the top, 27%. Pollard at 18% on DraftKings. And then Bijan a few notches below, but he's cheaper at least on DraftKings. But now we got Rachaad White and Travis Etienne to talk about above 15% also. So you can throw those in there if you want to talk about chalk running backs.
Yeah. So again, Mixon, Pollard are the 2 like touchdown regression guys where we've been waiting every single week, and you've been wrong every single week. So I feel like it's going to happen the week they're chalk, and I'm just like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
But if you just faded that every week, you've done well. Rachaad White, I really like, clear value, good chalk. Travis Etienne, that's fine ownership. Travis Etienne, same thing. Like, I think he's like one of the better values of the slate. Like, he should be probably, based on usage, volume, and production, maybe 1,100 more. The matchup isn't great, but it's like not terrible. What really matters is just that Jacksonville keeps this close. James Conner, I get. You could also argue against, like, he kind of already had a bell cow role either early in the year, wasn't super productive, although he was pretty efficient on the ground. His splits without Kyler, he actually does better without Kyler, but maybe that ACL rehab means he targets Conner more. You could say he's not fully healthy. They're just playing him because Amari DiMercado's out. You could also say that means, he's locked into 90% of the snaps. He's a fine play. I didn't think he'd be that chalky. I kind of had him lower and still wasn't super high on my list. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is an awesome play. Like, just awesome play. He's been at a 97% snap share, better the last 2 weeks, multiple touchdowns in each of his last 2 games, 14 straight games with a touchdown. If he has that, 50-point outing he had a couple of weeks ago, you can't profit without him. And then even if he has a bad game, like that still could be a great game for him at this price tag on this slate. He's hit basically 23 DraftKings fantasy points in 6 of 8 games this year. And it's just like, I like that 49ers game, but like and some of the pieces there, but like, would anyone be shocked if just McCaffrey vultures all the touchdowns as he typically does? Jaguars are great on the ground, but they're like bottom 3 against the pass as well. So, maybe this isn't the spot for a spike week, or maybe McCaffrey gets there through the air. Do keep an eye on that Trent Williams status. Like I said, I thought he was playing this week, but maybe it's more tentative than that.
Just want to look up how many receiving touchdowns, because part of me is thinking, do I just want to do a Brock Purdy with Christian McCaffrey stack? Like just, because he is involved in the passing game. I didn't see exactly what the can we see that in the bell cow report, how many rushing touchdowns he has?
That would be in the RB plus, so we'd go to offense at the top, RB plus wide receiver. But yeah, so he has 4 receiving touchdowns this year. Okay, but he also has 9 rushing touchdowns. So I feel like if I had $300, I could only make one lineup. It was a $300 lineup, single entry. I would strongly consider a Purdy McCaffrey stack. For large field, I might go other routes, but that just feels really safe to me, with underrated upside.
All right, we'll go back to McCaffrey looks interesting.
Singletary, I think, is an inferior play to Najee. Aaron Jones is fine. Austin Eckler is fine. Kenneth Walker really, really definitely stands out to me at ownership.
Let me ask you this about Kenneth Walker, because I was looking at last week and thinking Zach Charbonnet is another one of those just total galaxy brain large field plays. Outsnapped Kenneth Walker last week. Did you see a reason for that leads you to think Kenneth Walker might still be the bell cow?
Yeah, so we've been talking about this, where there's like coaches use their running backs in different ways. This is what I would call like a positive versus negative game script committee, and factor in like what that game was. That game was a blowout from the start. It was never competitive. It was game script which serves Charbonnet better than it does Walker. And okay, Charbonnet had a bunch of empty snaps because he's the better pass blocker, but those are snaps where you're not going to be scoring. You don't score fantasy points for successful pass block. And so if you just look at the raw touches, 9 carries to 4, 2 targets to 1, like if Walker's now the RB2, or like, why is he out targeting Charbonnet? And then the week before that, I thought was just, there's definitely some uncertainty here, but look at the ownership, like that's more than baked in. I think Walker's still the guy. He's just a running back who thrives in positive game script and is a massive fantasy disappointment with negative game script. But the good news is they're favored by 6 points. So they should win this game. Over Seattle's last 18 victories, their RB1 is averaging 19.3 fantasy points per game. That's top 5 production, and just clear leverage off of Geno chalk. So, and we know who Seattle is. They're a run first offense. So it just makes a lot of logical sense to me.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, Zach Charbonnet got some of his run. It looks like just looking at the game script from last week, got some of his run earlier in the game than I would have expected. But yeah, I mean, certainly you can take shots there. I'm less making a case against Kenneth Walker than I am intrigued by Zach Charbonnet as another galaxy brain play. So I want to look for reasons to play him.
I don't think he's in play, but maybe I'm wrong.
I'm going so galaxy brain this week, Scott. This is going to be the week that I just return $0 because I go 2 galaxy brain. But we can keep talking about some of the other plays that you like here. So you say, sounds like you have some interest in Najee.
I just said I liked him more than Devin Singletary for sure.
Any other
he's out carried, out targeted Jalen Warren since the bye. He's actually like efficient and productive, or mildly productive on that. decent matchup, slightly favorable game script. Just think he's a better value with more upside than Singletary. I like Alexander Madison, and I'm like not even ashamed to admit it.
You should be at least a little bit ashamed.
Right. All right. That's fair. A little bit. So like no one's talking about him. He's going to be a bell cow. I'm pretty sure. There's a chance I'm wrong on that, but I have to imagine without Cam Akers, he goes back to the usage he saw from weeks 1 through 6, where guess what? He was like Tony Pollard and Joe Mixon as the guys who were due. He saw a 71% snap share, ranked top 3 in carry share, top 12 in target share, ranked 6th in XFP per game. Another like just bad luck in terms of expected touchdowns versus actual touchdowns. He's not good. Like, I don't think he's good. It's just 5,500 for a guy who's probably going to get mid-range RB1 volume, possibly even better than that. I like him, and I like that no one's talking about him.
Yeah, all jokes aside, I think it makes some sense. Like as a Vikings fan who has to watch him every week, and as somebody who's heavily invested in best ball, it has been not that great for Alexander. He was fine last week. I think he put up like 17 fantasy points, got there kind of through the air last week, which you love to see that for DraftKings. The play makes sense at the low ownership that he's getting. I have to concede that it's a fine play. Anybody else that stands out to you as a great play?
Yeah, I think Jerome Ford's interesting. So I wrote him up earlier in the week. I'm like, all right, he's a strong value, but I really question his GPP winning potential and his touchdown upside, because since week 4, he's only played on 8 of 38 snaps, and the matchup's not great. But I mean, the guy had 20 carries and 7 targets last week. He's also like looked good, and this is like a great offensive line where it's kind of like poor man's Nick Chubb for sure, who like I was always lower on in DFS, and like there would always be those weeks where he just breaks off a 53-yard run, and I curse the heavens, and I could definitely see that happening. So just you have him at 5.1%. We had him at 1%, but okay. Just another name, not super high on my list, but I think he's a better value than ownership reflects.
Okay. Either of these Detroit guys in the game against the Chargers, I mean, it's the highest total on the slate. Any interest in Gibbs or Montgomery?
Yeah, I wrote up Gibbs and then deleted him. I just don't think he's like that great of a value. I will say he has more upside. If you're going to play David Montgomery, just like bet him to score multiple touchdowns. Whereas with Gibbs, like maybe he gets 6 receptions and a touchdown to equal that. But I mean, like he's looked awesome. He's looked more explosive. So I think better odds of scoring outside of the red zone. And the matchup certainly in his favor. The Chargers are giving up a lot to running backs through the air, but they've actually been really good against running backs on the ground this year, which is like the reverse of who they were before that. And also game script better suits his skill set.
Okay, so Gibbs over Montgomery if you're playing one of them. All right. Anybody else?
I don't think so.
All right. So you don't like my It sounds like you are off the Galaxy Brain plays this week. I mean, they haven't really worked out all that often. The like RB2 Galaxy Brain plays that I like to do has not worked out that great this week. But I got a couple, and you already poo-pooed. You don't want to play Zach Charbonnet, who is I think probably my favorite of the Galaxy Brain plays.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm going to some Zach Charbonnet. I also this is probably too Galaxy Brain, but Rico Dowdle. I mean, you talked about how maybe Tony Pollard gets just 2 carries in the second half. That would be in a case where they are going to be wanting to run the ball the entire second half. Rico Dowdle at 4,300 in a fantastic matchup. Is somebody at your door? Okay. Rico Dowdle to me, it's good that Scott can't hear this because he would hate it. Rico Dowdle to me is somebody that I sort of have interest in as just a extremely wide range of outcomes guy. He could put up like really dud your entire lineup is the likeliest scenario for Rico Dowdle, but I do think if like you said, Scott, I see you're back now. The they might be up like 3 touchdowns heading into halftime. Maybe Tony Pollard just gets rest the entire second half. And Rico Dowdle is 4,300, getting all of the run for an entire half against an awful defense. And there's also scenarios where, Tony Pollard gets hurt. Rico Dowdle can get there on, he always gets a handful of touches anyway. So he has some floor. Okay, rank them for me. Rank these 3 for me, Scott. Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, and Tyler Algier.
Oh, what's the spread in the Atlanta game?
The spread
is close, right? They're 3-point favorites.
Yeah, hang on. I had that open previously. I think it is a close spread there.
Yeah. So what I'll say about Dowdle is when they've gotten up massively, it's not like he's just the guy. It was really like an even split between him and Deuce Vaughn, and also Hunter Lupke. I think even.
Oh, good point. I forgot about Lupke. It's a 2-point spread in the Falcons game.
Yeah, I would probably go Algier, and then I just wouldn't play the other guys. I probably wouldn't even play Algier. Sorry.
All right. Well,
I've got Galaxy brain plays, but yeah.
For at running back, do you have any more?
No, maybe not at running back.
All right. Well, guys, I love Zach Charbonnet this week. He is the best play on the entire slate. No, but for real, I think I'll play. I'm going to at least play some Zach Charbonnet for sure. I might get Galaxy Brain enough to play Rico Dowdle. That is a good point that he might not just be the guy regardless. But I think that I would probably rank them Charbonnet, followed by Algier, followed by Rico Dowdle. But it's obviously not many people are going to play them. That's obviously a totally reasonable response. I hope that you're going to be with me playing the disgusting plays, Scott. You want to talk about? I
usually am.
I know. That's what I thought. Like, all right, Scott's going to be with me for sure.
What about Gus Edwards if Keaton Mitchell misses? Your boy Gus, maybe he just scores 3 touchdowns and gets 10 rushing yards.
That's a good point. No Tom says you guys completely left out Gibson.
It's actually not EOM.
Not That's EOM.
Yeah.
Okay.
He goes way back in the day.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Do you have interest in Antonio Gibson?
No, not at all. Keaton Mitchell's in, by the way, per chat.
Keaton Mitchell in, Justin Jefferson officially out per chat. So we're getting some info here. All right. Time to look at wide receivers?
Yeah.
All right. Wide receivers sorted by ownership. Highest projected ownership goes to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jamar Chase. You don't think so?
I did not think so. We have it like Chargers. We have it like 35% Jamar.
Oh, really?
18% Amon-Ra. But yeah, interesting. Okay.
I mean, it could be that we need to update our stuff. Our stuff gets significantly better on Sundays, so it could be that the ownership updates, and we'll see. Usually, it's not a huge difference, but there are a lot of moving parts on this list. So maybe it does end up changing where Jamar Chase gets ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown. But currently, we have it 21% ARSB, 20% Jamar Chase, 17% Marquise Brown, 16% each DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd. So let's make that the cutoff. What's your level of interest in these 5 wide receivers?
So Jamar Chase is like obviously an awesome play. There is a risk reward with like, oh, maybe he's seriously banged up. But then there's also like, does that really matter? The dude fucking played with a broken hip last year and was awesome. And according to our injury expert, like this isn't an injury that should really impact performance. And with when T Higgins is out or limited, Jamar Chase is like one of the biggest DFS cheat codes of all time. Yeah. Over the last 2 seasons and games, Higgins played on fewer than half the team snaps. He averages 15.5 targets, 32.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game. I was, like I said, surprised to see Amon-Ra come in so highly owned, especially because like listening across the industry, everyone's like, well, he's safe. He just like doesn't have a ceiling. And I just don't think that's true at all. Yes, he's safe. Like he's safe on like a Justin Jeffersonian level. Over his last 27 games where he's played on just 33% of the team snaps or more, He's averaging 22 DraftKings fantasy points per game, 10.5 targets. He hits value like 90% of the time. But like no one's noticed, at least from what I can tell, how much better he's been most recently. He's hit 100 receiving yards in 5 of his last 5 healthy games. He averages 14.3 targets over his last 3 games. So I was viewing him as a potential pivot off of Jamar Chase. In truth, they're just like both 2 really strong plays with like insane upside. Hollywood Brown, I love on paper, but you can just like, he's been seeing fringe wide receiver 1 volume all season, but he's had, he ranks second worst among all wide receivers in catchable target rate, where Kyler Murray ranked 4th best among all quarterbacks in the same stat last year. So obviously it's like, okay, fringe wide receiver 1 volume, and now actually competent quarterback play, fringe wide receiver 1 production, right? And he's not priced at it like at all. You can argue against him by saying that this isn't the spot for him, where this is like an easy bottom 5 matchup on paper, especially if AJ Terrell shadows. That is a cornerback I do worry about. So you can question the ceiling. DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is an awesome play. Tyler Boyd, I think, is a terrible play. I think he's just dust. I think Trent Irwin's a better play, and Trent Irwin's an inferior play to my guy Noah Brown. But it's when Higgins missed earlier in the season, Boyd ran 3 more routes than Irwin, but Irwin out-targeted him, had more receiving yards. Boyd had plenty of games last year without Jamar Chase, without T. Higgins, and he did absolutely nothing. I think he had 1 game over 12 fantasy points the entire season. So I think he's just dust, and he's not cheap, and he doesn't have any upside. So I don't like him.
All right.
I guess he had 2 spike weeks last year, but he had 0 games over 15 fantasy points. And I think those were games where Chase and Higgins both played.
All right. So poking
Irwin, by the way, like he had 4 touchdowns across his 5 games where he cleared a 40% snap share. And like I said, he was better than Boyd in the last game. So site minimum versus 4,600. Like that's not even good value to me.
When you say that Trent Irwin is an inferior play to Noah Brown, do you mean an inferior play to Noah Brown last week, or do you like Noah Brown better this week too?
No, I like Noah this week.
Noah Brown 3,700. We have him at 9% ownership. Trent Irwin we have at 8% ownership. So we do have Noah Brown at.
Interesting. We have Irwin as close to chalk.
Really?
Boyd a lot lower.
I do wonder if we need an update, if we're doing an update.
It could just be our projections. Like our projections are a variable that fit into it, and so we're probably lower on Boyd, and that played a role.
Yeah, for sure. So you like Noah Brown once again this week. I mean, I guess that makes sense. You like CJ Stroud. You're gonna like Noah Brown with Nico Collins out of there. Just looks even better than you did last week. So it makes sense to like Noah Brown. Looks great, obviously. Who else?
Yeah,
Who else
no one is talking about Noah Brown, which the dude has led the team in receiving yards in 2 straight games, including the 2nd most receiving yards of any wide receiver last week. I will say, I think I think Deontay Johnson should be right up there in terms of DeAndre Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, Tank Dell should all be at like 25% ownership. Like, I don't know what that's projected, but like, that's the quality of the plays. And that is kind of what our site is projecting. And it's just, but the thing against Tank Dell is like, this offense is way more spread out than anyone wants to admit. Over the last 4 games, Dell is basically tied with Schultz in target share, only slightly above Nico Collins, who's only slightly above Noah Brown. So this is like a spread out offense. It's like hyper efficient, and it's a game that projects to be pass heavy again. And Brown also gets the best matchup. He's been running 61% of his routes from the slot. Cincinnati's a slight slot funnel. Maybe Woods is in the slot, but I don't think so. And Woods is like dusty. So yeah, the dude led the team in receiving yards back-to-back games, behind only CeeDee Lamb in receiving yards last week, and no one wants to play him when he's super cheap.
I'm enjoying this chat from African King says that we were telling people not to play 7K quarterbacks last week, and that they saw us in the top 20 with CJ Stroud last week. I think you've got us mixed up. We built a lineup on stream with CJ Stroud last week. So whatever bad advice you got, it was not from us. We were telling people to play CJ Stroud last week. All right. Sorry. I'm going on a rant there, and I'm like, I don't understand this at all. This does not apply to any of the advice that we gave last week. All right. Who else do you like? Any other contrarian wide receivers you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Because you said you had a lot.
Yeah, I do have a lot. Let me just reiterate again. Deontay Johnson is an amazing play. He's another one where it's like, oh, he doesn't have any upside. He just scored a touchdown. He hit a career high in air yards 2 weeks ago. And like, that was a game he left early with injury late in the third quarter. And before that, he had like a 50% target share. Tank Dell, I think, is obvious. DeAndre Hopkins, obvious. Trent Irwin is just like, it has to be someone, right? Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is really interesting. Like I said, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett have like seriously underperformed. They both have like insane upside because this is a nuts matchup. Washington is easily the worst defense at covering opposing outside wide receivers. There's a chance DK Metcalf gets matched up against Emmanuel Forbes, which is like the most egregious mismatch in NFL history. But like I said, they've been underwhelming. JSN very quietly led the team in receiving yards last week. He had twice as many catches as any other receiver. DK Metcalf, by the way, every beat writer is saying is like seriously hurt. But JSN also had a 41% first read target share. That ranked fifth most among all receivers. That could be nothing, or that could be the sign of an impending breakout. And like I said, the matchup's more in the favor of Metcalf and Lockett, but the schematic matchup is in JSN's favor. He's been the most efficient wide receiver against too high coverage. Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, I think that's obvious. Chris Olave, I could see this being the bounce back game. It's a pretty good spot for him, and like people are saying with Pollard and Mixon, those other guys, like he's due, like XFP versus PPR that regresses to the mean 99 times out of 100, so long as volume doesn't decline, and it's not really declining. Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk, those guys are in play. Keenan, I at first wanted to argue that he's like just too overpriced because he's really struggled since losing Mike Williams. But digging deeper into that, he's had like brutal matchups in just about all of those games, and he gets a top 10 matchup this week. CeeDee Lamb, I think like it's obvious, like it's so scary to fade the guy who's been as productive as he's been the last 2 weeks on like insane volume. I worry about game script getting out of hand, but maybe he gets there anyway, or it's more competitive. And then for contrarian, like super contrarian guys, I have to bring up my guy Christian Watson, and like, don't tail me on this. Maybe I'm just a fool, but I just do see immense upside. Like he's running bad on injuries, and so like 65% route share, basically like only like factor that in, and or like don't even factor that in, and he's still top 6 among all wide receivers in end zone targets per game, top 20 in air yards per game. Then if you injury adjust that, it's like even better. So really good volume, only 4,900. I'm a believer in this player's talent so long as he's healthy, which I'm not sure he is, but it's also a great matchup. Pittsburgh's giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver ones. I will say I could see any one of Washington's wide receivers hitting. I think I liked Curtis Samuel the most earlier in the week, but to be frank, I just don't really have a great read now. Drake London, I also think, is underrated. He's a top 3 matchup. Unlike everyone else on Atlanta, he was actually seeing consistent volume. He had a 22.5% target share in 5 straight games. Only Stephon Diggs matched that. So just another low-owned player. But yeah, that's it.
That's it. All right. You have reached all of the low-owned plays you like. Let me see. All right. So, I was going to look at Cardinals because with Kyler back, I think that, do you think we have Michael Wilson back this week? I think it seems like he is on the way to playing.
Yeah.
Assuming that he plays, would you have any interest in Michael Wilson in his first game with Kyler Murray?
You can make that argument. Atlanta's been their bottom 7 against wide receiver 2s, their top 5 against wide receiver 1s. He doesn't have the schematic matchup. He's been shredding zone and like has nothing against man. I just had other names I liked more, but I get it.
All right, that's one that kind of stood out to me as a contrarian. Just kind of.
Just play Noah Brown. That's my read.
All right, got to go back to what worked last week, right? That just absolutely smashed everything last week. We can go back there. Finally, I can get off. I shouldn't. Phrasing. I can stop playing all of these Giants receivers that I've been just trying to make a thing for weeks. Now, finally, we get Danny Dimes out. I'm going to stop trying to make these Giants receivers happen. So that's
Neil. We didn't talk about the ultimate leverage play of the slate, Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito, yeah. I cannot play Tommy DeVito. Sadly, I just can't do it. So you have a lot. It sounds like you have a lot more interest in Deontay Johnson than George Pickens. Just to reiterate,
he's just like totally cucked him and like out alphaed him since he returned.
Okay, that's fair. I'm not going to push back there. George Pickens, I'm like, he looks really good in the tools. We just have him at 7% ownership, 12.5% chance to be an optimal. So I'm like, maybe I'll play.
He had negative receiving yards last week,
and he's caught a ball like so deep into the end zone and somehow stepped outside with it, like couldn't get his toe down. It was like the most bizarre. How do you not score there? That was the most frustrating thing on the planet to see George Pickens not score that touchdown last week. I'm absolutely with you on JSN, by the way. As you noted, the 41%, I won't go back there, 41% first read target share last week. Obviously that's not going to stick, but still really promising to see that Gino trusts him. Let me see. Is there anybody else I want to talk to you about? I don't think so. I think that we've largely talked about the most interesting plays. So it's no interest in Robert Woods returning.
I just don't think he's anywhere near as good of a play as Noah Brown, but I don't know. You want to quad stack CJ Stroud by all means.
We've got to be quad stacking there. All right. I think that we've talked about the most interesting plays at wide receiver. Did you talk about Brandon Ayuk, by the way? Just because we have interest in Brock Purdy, and my instinct is to just go to the cheaper wide receivers, but obviously Brandon Ayuk has been a beast. What do you think?
Yeah, it's this was one of the situations where I don't have a great read on. I like both just because I do really like Purdy, and it's a great matchup for both. Ayuk's been awesome. Like he's top 3 in yards per route run, top 3 in PFF grade. His production hasn't been as good as how awesome he's been. I think he's kind of run bad with touchdown luck, or you could just say like Christian McCaffrey's their touchdown guy. Either way, he only has 2 games over 19 DK this year. Debo has 2 games over 21, despite missing more games. So I love Ayuk. Like I love him, but I do think Debo's probably the better value. Another thing here to mention is Jacksonville's top 5 in their rate of zone. And so Ayuk's like great at everything, but he's over the last 2 seasons twice as good as Debo against man, and like basically tied with Debo against zone. So this would be, to me, a Debo week, but this isn't something I feel super convicted in, but that is my lean.
Okay. Yeah, that was my lean also. Debo saying we should be playing both. Yeah, that's certainly an option. All right. Should we move on and talk about some tight ends?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at some tight ends. And then we'll build some lineups after we talk about tight ends. And this week, honestly, I didn't find anything that really stood out to me. Like there are a lot of, pretty good tight end options. Nobody really stood out as like, I'm going to be playing 30-40% of this guy. It's more like probably playing tight ends with my quarterback or with the opposing quarterback, that kind of thing. Do you have strong convictions on any tight end plays this week?
Yeah, let me trash the chalk first, because that's my job, right?
Yep, that is true.
So Hawkinson, the argument against him is like He seems seriously banged up with a rib injury. He's playing with a backup quarterback. He has overrated touchdown upside. Argument for him is like, dude, Dobbs just locked on to him. Insane volume. Finished the week with 12 targets. There's the second most of any player, 33% target share. Totally get it. You could just fade him though, because he's the chalkiest tight end, and like that's the most volatile position in fantasy. And like typically that works out for you, fading the chalkiest tight end. But he's solid. Trey McBride, I think, is either should be 3 times this ownership or half the ownership, or maybe this ownership or 3 times. To me, it like really depends on Jeff Swain's status. So we saw 2 weeks ago without Ertz, insane volume, insane usage, 88% route share. And then last week, the raw volume is still there. Hard to take anything away just because Clayton Tune is like so bad. But his route share did fall to 59%. Snap share did fall to 67%. Jeff Swain is questionable. You want him ruled out. Wheels up for McBride if that's the case. Remember, we've been saying this for a while. Is like this. I think this is like this offense runs through the tight end position. McBride ranks 2nd. Ertz ranks 5th among all tight ends in targets per route run. Now it's more condensed without Ertz. Ideally, even more condensed without Swain. Or that could have just been like a weird last week. Obviously, anyway, like McBride, made us a bunch of money a couple weeks ago. So big fan of him. Evan Ingram is really interesting to me. I don't know. I can argue this in circles where he's like a massive XFP related value, and he has a great schematic matchup. He's shredding man coverage. He's like one of the top 5 most efficient players in fantasy against man, 3.7 yards per route run, easily best on the team. This is a 49ers defense that plays man at a top 5 rate. So he has all that going for them. Working against him is Fred Warner's an absolute stud. Rarely see ceiling games from a tight end against the 49ers. And I question his touchdown upside. He ranks what, like 3rd in targets per game among tight ends, and he ranks 38th in XTD per game, which is like insane and like impossible for a player getting that sort of target volume. Basically 0 end zone targets and just like never getting looked at inside the red zone. I will say Dalton Schultz should be right there with Hawkinson and McBride.
I'm doing this for Debro, looking at McBride's first read target share for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's insane. But a lot of that is week 8 doing some heavy lifting.
Yeah. 40.5. Damn. But yeah, it was week 9. He came down to that 59% route participation. So it was weird after like McBride clearly coming on and then out of nowhere down to 59% route participation. I think that you nailed the exact way to play it. It's just like if Jeff Swain plays, maybe throw a little caution on the play of Trey McBride, just because if he's going to be chalky and playing 60% of snaps, like at play it. But if Jeff Swain is out, like wheels up. I think you gave the perfect analysis for Trey McBride.
Yeah, to Debro's point, he was top 6 in first read target share among tight ends last week, despite seeing a reduction in route share. And what did I say earlier? Like, well, he's going to get a quarterback upgrade from Kyler, but I do worry about Hollywood in this matchup against AJ Terrell. So yeah, what if he has a 12 target game? Could definitely see that happening. He's a really good play. Dalton Schultz though, definitely should be projected higher, or at least command higher ownership. Just insane usage and volume the last 4 weeks, tied for the team high in target share. Remember, this offense is more spread out than anyone wants to admit. Leads all tight ends in DraftKings fantasy points per game over the last 4 weeks and yards per game. Unlike Evan Ingram, really good touchdown upside. He leads all tight ends in end zone targets, exactly as many as Travis Kelce and George Kittle combined. He also gets a best possible matchup. If you wanted to look at schedule adjusted, Bengals are the number 1 defense to target with tight ends. So great play right there. And then I like Sam Laporta as well. he was dealing with a calf injury, but nonetheless, he had double-digit targets in 2 of his last 3 games. He has like a uniquely high ceiling for the position. It's a top 5 matchup on paper, and it's a great schematic matchup. Chargers play man coverage at the 2nd highest rate. Laporta ranks 8th among all receivers in yards per route run against man. He was elite at that in college as well, so I treat that as a real thing. And then the only last name on my list was Chigo Okonkwo. Again, I just really like Will Levis this week. I get he's done nothing all year, but he's cheap. It's a pass funnel matchup. And it is like a great schematic matchup. Chig's target per route run triples against zone, and Buccaneers play that at the highest rate in the league. So outside of that, it's like a gross week. So if you wanted to, like, I'm not an MME guy. I wish I was. I keep telling you, Neil, like I feel like I'd be a millionaire if I was an MME guy, but maybe that's just wishful thinking. But yeah, if I was an MME guy though, like I would certainly sprinkle in some Logan, some Cade, some Connor Hayward, some Kyle Pitts, but maybe some Irv Smith. But I'm not. So those were the guys who stood out most to me.
All right, those are just the MME guys. Yeah, I think you nailed all the important talking points on the tight ends. Honestly, a lot of pretty solid tight ends this week. I talked about George Kittle as part of Brock Purdy's stacks. I think makes some sense. But a lot of tight ends that make sense in different scenarios here. Do you want to talk about defenses, or should we just get into building lineups? Because we have to cut it a little bit shorter today. I guess I'll throw it to you. I'll just bring up.
Yeah, we'll skip defense.
All right, we're gonna skip defenses, just build some lineups here. So we're gonna do that on DraftKings. I should note, because we are short for time. First of all, I didn't tell you guys, hit the like button. Please hit the like button if you haven't already done so. And if you haven't subscribed to the Stochastic YouTube channel, we're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers. So we'd appreciate that. And of course, hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. Also, if you live in one of these 6 states, Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, sign up for Bet365. If you haven't already done so, use the link in the description of this video. We have a great deal where if you bet $5, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. Unfortunately, only available in those 6 states. So again, Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado. You live in one of those 6 states, check out Bet365. The link is in the description. You just have to bet $5 and you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Of course, you need to be 21 plus to play in most states. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. By the way, all of the tools that we've been looking at throughout the show, both the stochastic tools, the fantasy points tools, all of them, it's in the description of this video. So check it out if you haven't already done so. Any great deals on the fantasy points data this week, Scott, or just regular price stuff? It's already a great deal.
Yeah, fantasy points data is 75% off. I think we have the best data suite in the game, bar none, and we're continually adding to it every single week. We added the coverage matrix a few weeks ago. We have a few more coming hopefully next week. Fantasy points premium also 50% off. Really believe we have the best football content analysis, football specific tools in the game, bar none. This show is brought in actually a ton of subs to our Discord. So really appreciative for everyone checking out our site and giving us a shot. So yeah, fantasypoints.com.
Yep. And this is the data suite, which is new this year, right? Just released right before the season. Yeah,
that's right. Also, by the way, we're really cheap. Right now, only $75 for PFF premium, which fantasy points premium, which includes college football. And the data suite's only $50 this year.
Yeah, and I'm loving it. I've been using the fantasy points data suite, so definitely recommend it as well, and agree that it is cheap. And of course, I also am a big proponent of the stochastic tools. I've been using them for years. Really upped my DFS game when I started using the stochastic tools. Just the boom bust. And the top stacks tool for football primarily is what I've been using for years. Of course, this year now we've got the lineup generator, the sims, a lot more powerful tools as well. But even just these basic tools, you can really up your game just using the boom bust, the top stacks tool. And of course, again, the link is in the description of this video. But enough about the tools, because we want to build some lineups, Scott. We want to get back into that top 1% once again, like we were a couple weeks ago. So let's enter some Millie Maker lineups. Do you want to start with your favorite stack, or should I start?
You can
First
start.
one. All right. So for this first one, I mean, we're both really on Purdy this week. Do I just want to go there to start?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to start with Purdy. We both love.
Like I said, if I was in a small field single entry, Purdy plus McCaffrey, I feel like would be the route I'd go. But for Millie, I don't know. There might be other stacks I like more, but yeah, I would say Purdy, McCaffrey, Debo. Or
in the Millie or no? I thought you were
yeah.
saying not in the Millie. All right, let's do it. Purdy, McCaffrey, Debo. I kind of like the idea of a bring back too in this stack. Like put a Ridley in there maybe.
Yeah.
And it's fairly contrarian already. Like none of these, not a ton of ownership. I guess we're getting some ownership going to McCaffrey, but in general, we're getting 7% going to Purdy. Debo, Ridley not getting a ton of ownership. So I think this is a kind of nice value stack to start with. And then, of course, we throw in McCaffrey for a little bit of salary there. We didn't talk about defenses, but I kind of like to get defense out of the way just to like kind of get a better sense of what money we have to spend on skill positions. Do you have any? Cardinals look like a pretty solid.
Yeah, I was going to say Cardinals, and then we could always upgrade if need be. All right, I think Ridley makes more sense than Evan Ingram. My counter was going to be that I just really like so many wide receivers, and I feel convicted in them that maybe that would make more sense, but I don't know.
We're getting some questions. Why Ridley over Kirk? I don't know. Kind of a gut feeling for me that I like Kirk has been clearly much better this year. Do you have great reasons for Ridley over Kirk?
No, I mean, it's definitely close. Again, Evan Ingram's their man beater. Like he is the best schematic matchup, but he is a poor on paper matchup. They both have great match. Like Jacksonville is just getting destroyed. San Francisco is getting destroyed by wide receivers. And so, yeah, you look at the production and Kirk has definitely been more productive than Ridley, but Ridley's actually had more spike weeks. So I like that for a Millie lineup. He's also 400 cheaper. So it's close, but that would probably be my lean.
Okay, good. Same lean there. Not a great sense, but I think Ridley makes a little bit more sense to me. All right, who do you want to put in? So we have 5,200 left over. Do you want to go to anybody in particular? Running back, wide receiver?
Yeah, I'll let you pick the wide receiver. Pick two of these wide receivers.
Okay. Who you got?
Deontay, Chase, Tank Dell, DeAndre Hopkins, Noah Brown, Amon-Ra.
All right. So Noah Brown, I guess, would be the cheap option there. So we throw him in there. And then Deontay, I think.
Deontay, Hopkins, Dell, Chase, Amon-Ra.
Well, so I kind of want to see how much money we have left over, or is that you want to figure out the price tag for your running back? For now, I'm going to throw in Deontay, but then we can upgrade later if the prices don't work out. All right, 58.50 remaining per player. One running back, one tight end. Do you have a lean on your tight end you want to play?
Yeah, Schultz maybe just to get a piece of. Oh no, we already have Noah Brown.
We do.
McBride, Hawkinson, Laporta, Evan Ingram, which fits the stack.
True. I guess that worked out last week having the double bring back. Could work out again this week.
Well, let's make it easier on ourselves if we don't feel great about this. What about running back, either Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, Alexander Madison?
If we do Rashad White, we could throw Laporta in there too.
Okay.
Let's see. So we have 200 left over. I mean, you're totally fine leaving 200 on the table. You like Rashad better than Bijan, I take it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a Millie lineup. Yeah.
I knew the answer. Do we have a defense we could up to 2,700? No, nobody that I really love. I guess if you wanna play into the Goff is bad on the road narrative, you can play Chargers defense. But I think this is a strong lineup. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it.
All right, we're doing it. We're doing this lineup. See if that worked. Damn it. All right. Hang on. Give me a second. I had just signed in before we started the show. I don't usually have, it's for whatever reason, only when I'm streaming, I get these, it signs me out of DraftKings during the show. I think it's probably related to me going into the DraftKings Sportsbook where I can't play. So it kicks me out of fantasy. I don't know. All right, let's see. All right. Gonna try that again. So we had Purdy with Debo and Ridley. We had Cardinals. See if I can reverse engineer. Oh, we had McCaffrey. We had Rashad. Tight end. Did we go? We went Laporta. Wide receiver Noah Brown. And then Deontay. All right. Take two. All right. Let's start another one. All right. How do you want to start the stack, Scott?
I kind of want to go back to the last lineup and talk game theory a little bit. Or
all right.
Are we pushing it too close to your deadline?
My next show starts in half an hour, so I'll need to get out of here within the next 10 minutes, probably.
All right. So I just want to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
So we have no exposure to the highest implied point total game of the week, which is Dallas. I guess you can just say, this game is never competitive. And, maybe, two offensive players score only one touchdown with not a lot of yards, and the defense scores a touchdown. And that's basically the end of the game. And so we're okay. We don't have anyone with the second highest implied point total of the week, Cincy. Do we want to try and upgrade White to Mixon, or just think this game goes under? And are these things you're typically thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually thinking more about individual player ownerships. Are we and projections? Rather not trying to play players that are highly owned, but trying to make sure that we have a high enough projection within a lineup for it to make some sense. I'm trying to debate. Does this one have? I mean, we got McCaffrey in there, so that's obviously brings up the projection quite a bit. Debo projects well, point per dollar. So I'm not concerned about not playing anybody from a specific game. Totally fading the chalkiest game on the slate is something that is totally fine too. You're just hoping that the game is going to fail overall. It's just not going to go, going to play slow, not going to go off the way people expect it to. So I have no issue not playing some of the chalkier games. We have Noah Brown in here from Houston, so we have some exposure to that second game. Yeah, I don't have any concerns about leaving the chalk game, not having any parts of the chalk game in our lineup.
Okay. I will just say, to me, this feels like a good small field single entry lineup, but maybe it's not my favorite large field, Millie lineup. But I don't know. I can't really articulate why. Just a gut feeling, I guess.
You think that this is? I mean, it's very stars and it's very balanced outside of McCaffrey. Like we have McCaffrey and Noah Brown is kind of the stars and scrubs, and then across the board outside of those, we've got a bunch of players in the like 5 to 6K range. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe you prefer the stars and scrubs approach for very large field. Do you think that might be part of it?
I don't know. Maybe I'm too in my head right now, but now I'm asking myself, like, how often do McCaffrey and Debo both get there and like outcompete all the other, game stacks in play? I don't know. Just questions I want to ask. You're the expert, Neil. I'm just the player takes guy.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to build DFS lineups. I think this is totally fine for a large field GPU. Like I think that we have a good balance here of chalk versus contrarian plays.
Yeah.
And we don't have we didn't play any of my nutso plays, like totally off the wall plays. Like everybody's going to get some ownership of the players we played here, but I don't think we also have anybody who's super chalky. Like I think that it's a totally fine amount of chalk in this lineup versus sort of some more contrarian plays. So I think it's a totally fine Millie Maker lineup. I think that it, we played some of our favorite plays. I think that it's a nicely balanced lineup. I think if the San Francisco game goes the way we're hoping it to, there's a really good chance that Debo and McCaffrey both put up big scores. So yeah, honestly, I think this is a pretty solid lineup. But we can build another one that is
different quarterback,
completely different. So we can scratch the itch that you feel is unscratched right now.
Okay.
All right. All right. It is funny. Somebody in chat pointed out that we, use our advanced data. We talk about the sims and stuff, and then we just hand build a lineup at the end. But I mean, we've looked at all of the data that is so like we're still kind of using the sims and using all the advanced data that we have at our disposal to come up with a hand built lineup. I'm actually I love I use an optimizer. I use the sims to build lineups for most of my lineups, but I still am a pretty big proponent of just hand building lineups for those of us who have a lot of experience doing so. I don't think there's any. Tori Tremble says Bernie Neal up to not play Rico Dowdle. Yeah, you're right, man. This is killing me. I'm going to force Scott to play him in this lineup. No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that to Scott. It would be Zach Charbonnet. If I was going to force Scott to play somebody, it would be Zach Charbonnet. All right, who do you want to start with here, Zach? Scott. Sorry.
So we talked about how onslaught stacks aren't played as much as they should and seem to be overrepresented on winning lineups. And so I kind of want to go that route. And why not go that route with a quarterback who's low owned, who just broke the slate with an onslaught stack last week? And so CJ Stroud stacked with Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Noah Brown.
Were we going back to the exact same stack that won last week? I mean, it doesn't seem like people are going to be on it.
Right. Brown is low owned again this week.
All right. So now,
and I'm not done. Bringbacks.
Okay.
Jamar and Irwin.
And Irwin is here, I'll search it. So now all we have to fill in for the rest of our lineup. So if this all goes right, we really only need to get 4 things right. We've already got the full-on game stack. Now, obviously, it's a little bit simplifying it to say oh, you just need this one thing to get right. We still need it to be these specific players, but we're still.
I mean, who else would it
be? Tyler Boyd,
dude,
Joe Mixon.
Everyone wants to play Mixon. He always underperforms. That's how I'm trying to think of the ceiling for this. So I want to play McCaffrey. I just see it feels like 99% odds he scores 1 touchdown and 70% odds he scores 2.
This is setting up perfectly for Zach Charbonnet at running back.
No,
well, we can probably play a cheaper.
All right, play Cardinals. Yeah, how dare you? Boom.
I'm trying to help you.
My galaxy brain fits perfectly.
This is the lineup that Scott wants to play in the Millie Maker. This is exactly, Scott actually built this lineup before we started the show because it's just all of his plays in one lineup.
All right. So this is fun, but this is a little too easy. Can we start over with a different quarterback?
All right. We can start over with a different quarterback because this one came together too easily for Scott. All right. We're going to do another one.
We need one that's fun. So I think I've got the perfect quarterback.
All right. Who's the perfect quarterback?
Will Levis.
I thought about actually starting with him with the first lineup because I knew you seem like you really want to play some Will Levis. Are we double stacking with Nuke and Chig?
Yeah, I'd like to. All
right, 59.50 left over per player.
I would argue for White as the bring back just because there's a lot of wide receivers I really like, and okay. I'm hoping that's my edge this week.
Yep. No, that White makes sense to me as a bring back there.
So Chase is going to be someone we can afford. Chase or Amon-Ra is someone we can afford.
Let's try Amon-Ra in this one. He's a little bit cheaper. I think we need a little bit of cash savings, and we already played a Chase lineup.
Okay. And then I would say Deontay. Do we have Deontay yet?
We don't have Deontay yet.
All right. Well, I love Deontay.
5,400 left. We still haven't put our defense in there. Are we just going to start with the Cardinals every time, or should we mix it up? We can go Commanders.
It's Taylor Heineke at 3,300. It feels easy. Or 20. What is it? 2,500. Yeah, that feels easy.
I know. There's a part of me that's like, should we be playing the Seahawks defense? Just take advantage of the Sam Howell sacks, but they are expensive. Cardinals is just cheap, so makes some sense.
Do we have Walker in a lineup?
We don't have Walker in a lineup yet.
All right, let's put him in.
And we have 6,900 left over. Unfortunately, you wanted Gibbs over David Montgomery. So, what about DK Metcalf in a good spot here?
Aaron Jones, Chris Olave. Joe Mixon. I kind of like that because it's the second highest implied point total of the week.
You like Mixon?
We're contrarian enough. So like in situations like this, I kind of just deviate to the chalk, and then we could upgrade. Maybe we could stack Walker or we could stack Mixon. Where are they at?
Wait, stack Walker or stack Mixon? You mean it like upgrade?
No, their defense. Stack them with their defense.
Oh, I see. All right. Yeah. Bengals are at 2,800. And the Seahawks, I think, are too expensive.
All right.
Yeah, they're 4,100.
Yeah, I like that mix and stack.
Bengals. Okay.
Because of the criticism we got, let's just like take a minute to study this and see if there's not like if we could further the correlation anywhere with like stack Deontay to Christian Watson. But I don't want him destroying another one of our Millie lineups again.
No, screw Christian Watson.
Stack St. Brown with Eckler. No, it looks good.
All right. Let's do it.
Boom.
It is painful for me to not have Zach Charbonnet in any of our lineups. We went Kenneth Walker instead, but he's probably the likelier to hit. I will acknowledge that he is the likelier running back to hit for the Seahawks. All right. Anything else, guy?
What we need to do, if Charbonnet outscores Kenneth Walker, I'll do something embarrassing on the next show. I'll shave my beard or something.
I'm trying to think of what I could do here. Like I kind of want to build a lineup right now, just like by myself with all of my disgusting plays. Just
scratch that itch.
Yeah.
But then put it in a free roll, and so it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna do it.
Let's do a Charbonnet Dowdle team.
You want to? Let's do it. I want to. All right. Let's just see.
You're
what
a
we can
wild
do.
man.
I mean, it's what's going to hit. We all know that this is what.
Hey, I touted Cutterell Hodge last week, so.
Or should we do? Can we do Charbonnet and Algier? I feel like that one's just a little bit likelier to hit, like higher floor.
If Charbonnet smashes, I'm gonna feel so bad. I feel like.
No, we'll do a Dowdle. Let's just do it. Just go all the way to the basement with these.
Well, I like Algier more than either of them. I mean, like how perfectly Arthur Smith would it be if there was like he got asked a million times in the press conferences about Bijan's red zone usage, and then he just like finds a way to get Algier 5 rushing touchdowns this week.
Big Top Dog asking, no NBA? No, there is NBA. I will be on the NBA Live Before Lock show starting in 18 minutes. So come back around.
You're Mr. a wild man.
Sharps Dowdle unsubscribe. That's fair. That's fair. I want to be clear that we are just doing wild things for this Millie Maker lineup.
All right. So St. Brown and Jamar Chase.
Yes. All right. I think just go back to the Cardinals.
Let's do a Cowboys team. Oh no,
Cowboys stack. But we have Dowdle in here, so this is kind of playing for the
right. So Cowboys D.
Yeah, Cowboys D makes a lot of sense. They are expensive.
Back-to-back pick sixes to start the game. Pollard plays 0 snaps. Dowdle gets 30 carries.
All right, tight end. Let's see here.
I mean, we're just super contrarian enough. I would say just Hawk or McBride or Schultz.
Yeah, or Laporta. How about let's go Schultz. Schultz and Chase we've got. So now we got to start thinking about what is. Oh no, I want to do Laporta and Goff in this one.
Oh, I like it.
Because now we can go a little bit chalkier at quarterback and at in our stack. So now we've got Goff with St. Brown and Laporta. Now we can play a super cheap wide receiver. So that would be, is Noah Brown the guy that we should play here?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because we didn't play Schultz. So now we can play Noah Brown. 4,400 left over for a flex.
Quentin Johnston.
I
think he stinks. I'm just saying, yeah, I feel like you need a charger. I'd much rather play JSN, who's a way better play, but ...
We are playing Zach Charbonnet. Oh, that's tough. No, let's go QJ. Somebody actually asked me on a show, I don't remember if it was earlier this show or the one I did earlier, how much I like QJ as a bring back. And I said, I'll probably have some not playing a ton of QJ this week, but in this particular lineup, it actually makes some sense. Yeah, I like it.
The funniest thing in the world is if this wins the Millie, and then it would be
hilarious. Yes. Oh, that's true. That would be, and that's, honestly, that would be my favorite thing ever. If this one wins the Millie and I have to split $1 million with you with this disgusting lineup, let's do it. All right.
And there's a live final entry associated with that. So that would be super fun to stream live from wherever that is.
That'd be a lot of fun. All right, Scott. I got to get to some NBA.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah,
coming up. Do you have any final words?
No, this was a blast. Thanks for tuning in, watching, and like and comment, subscribe, all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you guys for supporting us. As always, it's been a lot of fun doing this show. So glad that we're still able to do it in week 10. Thank you guys for watching. As Scott said, please do hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. And if you're interested in NBA, I'll be on that show in about 15 minutes. I guess most people aren't watching the show live anyway, so it doesn't apply to most of you anyway. But thank you for watching, guys. Good luck this weekend.